I remember when you ran for treasurer in 2010. I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about that. That wasn't as successful a race. So I think you lost by, 25 points or something like that?
Yeah, thanks for reminding me.
Well, I appreciate it. That's why I'm here for you, man. But I'm curious because I think there's a lot of people who have big aspirations and dreams for their lives, right? And here we are sitting here in this day. You must reflect on that moment when you lost that election. You probably still had ambitions to do what you're doing now or more. What was it like for you, and how did you keep yourself and your head in the game?
Yeah. I think it's safe to say I've learned as much or more from the races I didn't win and the things that didn't work out as the things that kind of went my way. And there's a long story to that race for treasurer, but to try to make that long story short, we had an incumbent state treasurer in Indiana who was going to war against the Obama administration to try to shut down the auto rescue, which I knew was critically important for so many people in our state and definitely where I lived to be able to keep their jobs. And nobody wanted to go up against him, so I tried, knowing it was uphill.
How old were you?
I must have been 27 when I got into that race, right?
Yeah.
And there's a reason why the field was wide open for some 27-year-old dude to try to run and easily get the nomination, right? Nobody really thought it was a winnable race. And I remember meetings with people I was trying to get their support, sometimes looking at me, trying to gauge whether I was just nuts or not to even think that I could win. And I remember on election day being out at near a polling site in Indianapolis. It was pretty clear. You never know by some miracle, but it was pretty clear.
Did you have any polling in the race?
No, we couldn't even afford a poll.
Yeah.
We had enough money for one TV ad, which we could only run in certain markets, and that was about it. But what I learned was how to talk to, because not only did people not know me, they also didn't know the office. So to say, here I am, I'm Pete Buttigieg, I'm running for state treasurer, here's why you should care what your state treasurer does, here's why I'm better than the guy who's in there. And learning how to do that, like stick your hand out, talk to strangers, really just taught me things about how the practice of politics works that I bring with me to this day, at a very different level.
So the next day after that election, did you doubt yourself?
I mean, it was tough to have, first time you put your name on the ballot, it was tough to know that 1 million people voted for the other guy. And, you go home and you ask yourself some questions. I spent like a year doing that. I quit my job. The only income I had was, Navy Reserve pay, like $400 a month, while I was doing that full time. So, you start asking yourself, okay, was this really worth all of that? Especially because it was soon after that our mayor in the city of South Bend decided he was not going to run again. He'd been the longest serving mayor in the city's history. I think
How long?
15 years, something like that.
With term limits, or just decided?
No, he just decided it was time. Yeah. And so folks had just seen me run for treasurer. I earned some support there, even though I obviously didn't win. But as people were asking me if I was going to look at that race, I understood two things. One, I just had my head handed to me in the one and only time I'd run for office. And two, if I ran again and lost again, I was probably done, right? So there was a sense of risk, a sense of defeat, but also a sense of excitement that, okay, look, if this is worth doing, then
you brush yourself off and get back in.
Yeah.
So you get elected, and then when you run for president, again, there were a lot of doubters, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember David Axelrod even tweeting, longest of long shots, but take a look at this guy, right? How did you think about that, right? Because thinking about not only just putting your family through that, but, there are mayors of cities that are a lot bigger than South Bend who probably did not ever imagine themselves as potentially being the president of the United States. What was your thought process? And again, were you scared at that point?
Yeah. I mean, I certainly didn't imagine when I was running for re-election for my second term as mayor of South Bend that next stop straight to the White House, right?
Yeah.
What happened was a really crazy sequence of events, starting with Donald Trump winning the election, and then winding up running for chair of the DNC, which was not a thing I'd ever pictured myself doing, but for a whole set of reasons wound up deciding to do that. Again, not winning, but coming to understand more about our party and our country through that process. And what led me to decide to run was looking at what was going on in the party and the country, and realizing even with about 20 people, and you remember there were literally 20 people, they had to divide the debate into 2 heats of 10 the first time. And that was just the 20 who made the cut. That even with 20 people in it, nobody was going to do what I might do. Nobody had the perspective generationally, plus regionally, plus coming from local government, that I just had something different to offer. And I thought, if I have something different to offer, I got to try.
Were there ever days at a Iowa, breakfast or something like that where you're like, I'm nuts?
I mean, the whole thing was nuts in it, but actually some of the things that really made me wonder if I was nuts was when it started taking off, because I knew what a long shot it was, of course. Like, I wasn't stupid. I knew what it meant as a second-term mayor of South Bend, Indiana, to be seeking the presidency. But when I remember we had a meet and greet scheduled in a bar on the top floor of this maybe 3-story building in New Hampshire. And I got there, I got dropped off, and my friend Steven, who was also my political director, came downstairs to meet me with this big grin on his face. I said, how's the meet and greet looking? And he said, it's not a meet and greet anymore, it's a rally.
Love it.
And we got up there and there were like hundreds of people there, at least a couple hundred. And those were the moments that I thought, oh, okay, this is actually maybe resonating. And in some ways, I think I was honestly more prepared for the possibility of defeat than what it would be like for that rocket ship to take off. That was the early months of the campaign when we went from nobody to plausible.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of The People's Cabinet. If you did, please like, subscribe, ring that bell, and put in the comments below who else you'd like to see sworn in. And stay tuned for new episodes every Tuesday. Let's go.